If you think about it, Viognier is kind of like the Stanley Tucci of wine grapes, because he gets to be famous in his own right, but also has connection to grapes that are way more famous than he is. So stick with me for the analogy. Stanley Tucci, you may or may not know, is Emily Blunt's brother-in-law. And this is because Stanley married Emily Blunt's sister Felicity, which I guess makes that Devil Wears Prada co-performance just that little bit cuter. But remember, Emily married John Krasinski, which means that Stanley is not only Emily's brother-in-law, but is also John's brother-in-law. Now, I think Viognier actually has far more mystique than Stanley Tucci, because Viognier's relationships are a little more undercover and hard to figure out. So what he gets to do is give off Sigma vibes while still having alpha friends. So what we know so far is that Viognier is either Syrah/Shiraz's grandfather or some sort of step sibling. And we're going to need a little more evidence to figure out which way that swings. But either way it goes, it gives those Rhone-style Syrah-Viognier co-ferments a real undercurrent of the deep south. But Viognier is also closely related to a grape called Freesia from Piedmont. And Freesia has a parent-offspring relationship with the Barolo rock star Nebbiolo, which means Viognier is in some way related to Nebbiolo. We just haven't figured out how. Now we're discussing Viognier because today's hand drink solo wine of the day is the Strandveld Vineyards, all the way from the wine ward of Elim, which sits at the heart of South Africa's southernmost wine district, Cape Agulhas. Now, if you're fascinated about dynamic wines coming out of interesting regions within the South African winelands, then subscribe to our Hand Drink Solo YouTube channel, where there are more than 300 videos like this. But also give us a like, because this helps more people like you to discover the videos that we make. The Agulhas Wine Triangle is a fascinating little region that has developed quite a name for itself through its coastal Syrahs, which have a very distinctive flavor profile and often feature moody, surly black olive tapenade elements and spicy herbal rocket leaf notes. And if you really have no idea what those things all taste like, then track down bottles like De Grendel's Elim Syrah or the Trizaan Elim Syrah or Strandveld's Elim Syrah. One thing you won't find people shouting about is all the amazing Viogniers coming out of Agulhas. And that's because there really aren't any. Other than this one, of course, which is what makes today's wine such an epic surprise. Strandveld Vineyards are one of the more established producers within the Agulhas Wine Triangle, and it's led by the superbly experienced winemaker and cellar master Conrad Flock. Now, if I was to outline the highlights in their range, I probably would center most of my attention on their Syrahs, but they also have an absolutely impeccable Southern Rhone style Grenache Syrah blend, which also has some Mourvèdre in there, and that's probably one of their top wines. Finally, for the Sauvignon nerds out there, Strandveld also have a relatively famous Pof Adder Bos Sauvignon Blanc, so hunt that down. When we finally get into the glass and give this guy a sniff, well, we discover what I guess is a remarkably understated Viognier nose. But then I am aware that calling Viognier understated is really a little bit like saying that Nicki Minaj performing at the VMAs is a low-key affair. Which is why, even though, as I said, it's restrained for a Viognier, you still get a really open nose of lemon blossom, nutmeg, marzipan, peach, and then just a little puff of chalk dust right at the back. As for what Conrad Flock says, he says when he drinks from day to day, one day he feels like it's almost like a Weisse Riesling with sort of green apple notes, and then the next day the apricot and more classic peach fruit comes out. So yeah, I guess Viognier is like a box of chocolates. Classic Viognier, however, can be summed up by really rich, ripe notes of apricot and peaches, and then lots of sweet honeysuckle, white flowers, and a quite pronounced sort of bitter almond element. And when you put all of those all together, it can be overwhelmingly perfumed, which this one is definitely not. In fact, the aromas on this one that I've just mentioned are the perfect invitation to give it a sip. And it's here that I feel that the true magic of this wine is revealed, because as I've hinted at, Viognier can be super blousy and extroverted and fruit forward, and you can get these very ripe, imposing sweet peach notes and a big oily slick mouthfeel and low acidity and high alcohol. But here, what you have is immediately any of those sweeter peach elements that you might have smelt are transformed by this really quite bracing textured citric acidity and apricot notes that are beautifully tart. And then towards the finish, rather than being lumpy or slick or rotund, you have this beautiful, dry, pithy citrus element that is super refreshing. And that's not often something one says about Viognier. My favorite element of the wine comes right at the back. as you're swallowing it, you get a little pop of musk candy or apricot bonbon, also a little puff of jasmine flower, just as you're swallowing. And I guess this is really a beautiful example of what South African Viognier can taste like if grown in some well-chosen, cooler South African vineyard sites. Okay, so that's all we have for today. But as promised, I've left links to 2 videos. One is where we talk about Strandveld's estate Syrah, which is definitely worth watching. And the other is where we talk a little bit more about the Sauvignon Blancs coming out of the Agulhas region.